Welcome back to my channel, y'all. My name is Tierney, and this is going to be the review slash recap of Black Lightning Season 1, Episode 8. This episode is entitled The Book of Revelations. It starts off with Anissa and her father and they're sparring. He's basically trying to teach her some fighting tactics and make sure she can handle herself. And they also have holograms that are popping up all over the place, and she has to decide which one is a threat and which one isn't. So a particular hologram pops up with the Confederate flag on it, and we know how Anissa feels about the Confederate flag. And she basically injures the guy, and Jefferson stops the sparring and he says, "You injured him for no reason. You know, he was not a threat." She says, "What about the flag on his t-shirt?" He tells her that our goal is to stop crime and violence without any harm to civilians, regardless of their worldview. He also tells her, you know, you can't be reactive. And she says nobody's perfect. And also in the background, they have the news playing. And on the news, there's different people coming on saying that they don't appreciate Black Lightning and he should go back to where he came from. And one guy was even mad that he killed Lady Eve. And I guess they assume that Lady Eve is like an upstanding figure in the community. I guess they don't know that she's evil. Seemingly while they're taking a break, he startles Anissa and he tells her that you can't be startled ever in this job, because if you take one wrong move or breathe the wrong way, you could die. He tells her that their first mission is to clear Black Lightning's name, and they have to find out who really killed Lady Eve. Then we go to a scene of two kids. They're on stage and they're practicing some rap song, and in walks Lala. And at first they tell him to get out, but they didn't realize that it was him. So then they start asking him questions like, you know, the streets are saying that you were gone and that you were dead. And he says, "Dead? I think I was." And he tells them to turn the music back up. Then we see Gambi. He's in his car and he's waiting on another car to pull up. The guy pulls up. The first thing he says is that he regrets not killing Black Lightning the moment he came back. And Gambi says it was a logical choice based on the information that we knew at the time. And then the guy says, "Well, now Lady Eve is dead." And Gambi says, "Well, we can't be sure that Black Lightning is the one who killed her." And then he says, "Well, both of her security guards were fried and she was fried as well." And Gambi says, "Somebody could have set him up." And the guy's like, "Who could have set him up?" Gambi says, "I don't know." And the guy cuts him off. He says that he usually values his counsel and appreciates his measured approach, but Black Lightning has become a nuisance to him and to the ASA, and he has to be dealt with. So he put a price on Black Lightning. So then Gambi calls him by name and says that was a mistake and we should not kill him because he could further our understanding of enhanced human abilities. Martin says that they've dissected enough metahumans and one more isn't going to make a difference, basically. Then Martin says that Lady Eve was the liaison between the ASA and the 100, and she got green light on the streets faster than anyone in the country, and he says that her murder sets the Freeland experiments back. So then Gambi says that's true, but we need to be sure before we kill him that that's the right move. Martin says, "I don't like power that I can't control," and he says that when Black Lightning came back, you were supposed to figure out who he was and take care of it. You didn't. So you need to give any information that you have to the agents so that they can take care of it. Martin also says that he's sick of this neighborhood. They don't take care of it. All the food is fried. The only thing that people are good for here is experimentation, and they should be happy that we're here, and green light will bring purpose to their lives. So then he also says we're doing God's work. So then we have a scene of Lynn and Jefferson, and they're preparing dinner. And Lynn asks Jefferson, "Is it okay for me to ask how Anissa is doing in her training?" And Jefferson says, "You know, of course, she's doing well." And he tells Lynn, "You know, no catastrophic thoughts. We just have to think positively." And she is taking it very seriously because she wants to go out with me. And she knows that if she doesn't do well, then she's not going to have the opportunity to go out with me. Lynn recalls a memory of Anissa when she was in second grade and she got suspended. She thought the teacher had made her friend cry. Jefferson, you know, he starts laughing, and Lynn says the stakes are higher now, and how do you turn somebody into something that they're not? And Jefferson says, you know, she has brains like you, and if she wants to be a change, she's going to look at herself first. While they're preparing dinner, Lynn also says that Jennifer is going to be helping her in the lab because she hasn't figured out an activity to replace track yet. Then we have this scene of Lynn and Jennifer, and they're in the lab and they're cleaning up after the break-in. And Jennifer's asking why, I guess, her assistant isn't helping them clean up. And she says that, you know, he has a PhD. She asks casually what's going on with Anissa and Dad. And Lynn says, what do you mean? And she says, well, at first they were fighting, but now they're all buddy-buddy. And she's like, something strange is going on, basically. And Lynn says, you know, she shrugs it off and she's like, families have their problems and it's all good. And so then she realizes that Alvin's research is missing. And she asks Jennifer, have you seen any yellow crumpled up papers? And Jennifer says, no, I haven't. And so she tells Jennifer, you can go home because she needs to find out what happened to the papers. Jennifer asks her if she can go to the school and help Keisha hang up flyers. And Lynn says, yeah. Then we go to the Freeland morgue, and Anissa and Jefferson have broken in and they're looking for Lady Eve's body because the crime scene has been cleared up. While they're looking, Gamby tells Jefferson that somebody has put up money to capture Black Lightning. Jefferson says, oh, this is a perfect time to tell me this, you know, who put up the money? And Gamby says, you know, I don't know. So then they have to break through a wall, and Jefferson tries to coach Anissa on using the least amount of force as possible to get through the wall. And at first, you know, she just touches it with her finger and it wasn't enough. So then she uses way too much and she, you know, breaks the wall and they're able to get through. They find Lady Eve's body, but at first they find the twins. And so when they find her body, Jefferson tells Anissa to pick up her arm, and Anissa's like, her arm? And Jefferson's like, yes, gently. So she picks up the arm, and Jefferson asks her if she ever thought about the cadavers that they worked on in medical school, and she says no. He starts saying that, you know, she had a family, maybe she was putting together a grocery list before she got killed, and now this happened in one wrong move, and basically you need to be careful. Gamby interrupts first, and then Anissa interrupts and says that if she had been killed by a lightning strike or a black lightning strike, there would be a tree pattern on her skin. And Gamby says, yeah, it's called Lichtenberg scarring. And basically that's when electricity passes through something that's insulated. Anissa says that it looks more like a burn, something that was caused by a high voltage flash. And then Jefferson starts asking him questions like, was this a weapon? And Gamby says, you know, it probably was. And how much power would it take to get a weapon like this? And he says 1 billion joules. And so then he says, well, you can track radiation, can't you? And Gamby says, yeah, I can. And then Gamby also says that since Black Lightning has never killed anyone before, the coroner wouldn't know what to look for. Lynn goes to the lab where I guess they figure out what the sample is, and she asks the lady if they have her sample, and the lady tells her that they had a break-in. Lynn says, well, can you find out if my sample was affected? And the lady looks it up and says, yes, your sample was one of the ones that was taken. And then she asks her, do you have a backup copy of the results? And the lady says, you know, I don't know. We've been real backed up, but there was somebody on maternity leave for a while, so it could be in the to-do folder. So I think she goes and she finds it. The next scene is Keisha and Jennifer, and they're at the school and they're hanging up flyers, and Jennifer's making fun of Keisha and she's like, how'd you get stuck with student government? Keisha says whoever controls the money controls the school. Keisha decides to climb up this ladder, which looks very unsafe, and so while she's climbing and trying to get to this spot that nobody else will get to, she almost falls. And when she does that, I guess because Jennifer is so scared for her friend, she fries her phone in her hand, and to the point where it burns her. And she put the flyers that were in her hand, they caught on fire. So she's trying to make sure, you know, Keisha couldn't see anything was wrong. And she's looking at her phone like, oh my gosh, what happened? And her friend's like, oh, you get a new one now. And you know what? I'm really worried about her friend, because while she was about to fall and break her neck, when she gets down, the only thing she can think about is Jennifer getting a new phone. Like, girl, priorities. The next scene is Lala. He's in the back seat of his car, and the two dudes from earlier are driving him, I guess, to his house. He's in the back seat and he's talking to LaWanda, but it appears that he's talking to himself because nobody but him can see or hear LaWanda. And LaWanda says, you know, now that you're back, what's the plan? And he says, I don't know. And then she says, you know, word on the street is that you're dead and the one driving is trying to take your spot. And basically, you know, she doesn't trust him. Lala says nobody can take his spot that are alive, and the dudes that are driving, they cool, they not gonna do nothing to me. LaWanda reminds him that he killed her because she put a camera in his face, and he tells her that he told her to go home. So the ghost of LaWanda is trying to get Lala to kill the driver right now, and Lala says, well, do you want to crash? He's the one driving the car. The last thing LaWanda says that we see is that people turn. The guy that's driving the car asks Lala, is everything cool? And Lala says, yeah, everything's cool. So then we go back to the lab, and Gambi's on his computer, and Jennifer and Anessa are standing up beside him, and they're tracking the radiation. And Gambi tells them that it's a bad idea for them to go out. Even if they're not dressed as Black Lightning and Thunder, somebody could see them digging into Lady Eve's murder and put two and two together and realize who they are. Jefferson says he'll make sure that that doesn't happen. He starts asking Anissa a few questions like what is she susceptible to, which she doesn't have any answers of because she hasn't done much with her powers. And then Jefferson asks Gambi what he's waiting for, and then Gambi says, I'm waiting for you to come to your senses. They find that the radiation, I guess the source of the radiation is coming from Hampton Woods. Anissa asks Gambi, well, what are they doing out there? And Gambi says, I don't know, but I'll go check it out. Nobody's looking for me. There's not a bounty on my head, and I can take care of myself. And then Jefferson says, no, we have to clear Black Lightning's name, so we're going to handle it ourselves and we'll go. And then Jefferson also says that he needs to train Anissa, so this will be a good learning opportunity for her. And then Gambi gets mad and he walks away because I guess Jefferson isn't doing what he wants him to do. Back at Lynn's lab, she's going through, I guess, the information that the girl gave her from the other lab, and she's looking at the sample from Alvin's locker, and then she's looking at Greenlight, and she's comparing the two, and then she makes the discovery that basically it's the same thing, like it has some of the same components in it because it's a match. We see Anessa and Jefferson, and they're in Hampton Woods now. They're looking for the source of the radiation. Anissa is talking about how she doesn't like the woods because Black people die in the woods, and Jefferson says, Jefferson tells her that that's only in horror movies. He gets a call from Lynn telling him that the sample from Alvin's research was a vaccine, and the vaccine has the same active ingredients in it as Greenlight. And Jefferson says, are you sure? That was from 1986, almost 30 years ago, or over 30 years ago, or whatever. And Lynn says, yeah, I'm sure that it's the same active ingredients as Greenlight. And so he says, well, somebody's been working on that for 30 years. And she says that it looks like it. And he says, well, we should try to figure out who developed the vaccine. She says, I tried, but 30 years is a long time ago. So he tells her to go talk to Gambi. He might not know anything, but he might know somebody that knows something. He also tells her to be careful. Then we have this quick scene of Gambi, and he's in church. A lady by the name of Miss Johnson comes up to him and asks him if everything is okay. And he says that, do you think it's true? She says she believes that the good Lord helps us. And she says sometimes what we want is not what we need. And then she tells him that he'll be in her prayers. We go back to Hampton Woods, and Anissa's asking Jefferson questions like, how long did it take before you became Black Lightning and put on a suit? And Jefferson says, it took a while before I actually committed. Anissa asks him, why did you stop all those years? And he says that it's complicated. So basically an ask your mother type question. Then Anissa asks him who trained him, and he says Gambi trained him in tactics and fighting. And then Anissa says, well, why is he so mad right now? And Jefferson says, he's not mad, he's worried about me. And that's how he gets when I do something that he doesn't want me to do. And so finally they find the weapon with a buried body. Anissa asks him what now. So Jefferson gives Henderson a call and tells him the coordinates of where the body is and the weapon that actually killed Lady Eve. And he says to send a team out here. And so then Anissa asks her dad if Henderson knows that he's Black Lightning. And Jefferson says no, because that will put him in an impossible position. We have a scene of Jennifer. She's in her room and she has her phone in her hand, and she's trying to make whatever happened before happen again. And at first she doesn't, but then eventually she does. I don't know if Jennifer's trying to figure out what triggers it or what she thought about when she did that. Her eyes flame up every time she does it. Then we go to Lynn, and she goes to Gambi to talk about the vaccine and how, it's related to green light. And she says, well, I've been doing some research on a vaccine from about 30 years ago. He says, that was a long time ago. Why the interest now? And she says, I just got the sample, and it was, in a box of research for a series of articles that Alvin was doing. And Gambi looks like Alvin Pierce, and Lynn's like, yeah. And so Lynn says it turns out that the vaccine is closely related to green light. And she was wondering if there was a doctor at the time or anybody around in the community who could tell her the company that it was developed by. So Gambi says no, and then Lynn says, well, a vaccine has to be government approved. She asks him, did he have any contacts back then? And so Gambi closes the folder, I think, and then he's like, I can't talk about this. And she starts looking at him crazy because she put two and two together. And, she realizes that he has something to do with it. Then she says 30 years ago, you moved here around the time the vaccine came to Freeland. And then she says, you never talk about your life before Freeland. And, we figured that you had your reasons. And he says, I did. Then she says, Jefferson trusts you. Gambi says, I know, I think it's time for me to have a talk with him. So at that point, we started out this episode knowing that Gambi basically had something to do with everything going on as far as green light is concerned, but this information being brought to light and Lynn finally realizing it is like a slap in the face to their family, because this is tearing the community apart, this drug. So then we go back to the woods, and Anissa and Jefferson are a little ways away from where the gun is actually located, and they're waiting for Henderson to send some men out. Anissa says that, the most important part of a stakeout is to use the restroom first. They see someone approaching the gun. So Jefferson says, I'm going to go over and check it out, and I can disable him if I need to. You need to stay here. And he tells her, stay here, don't move. So Anissa is looking at the guy fiddling around with the gun. Jefferson's getting closer and closer to him. He's looking as well. And then the guy looks, and he's like fiddling around, and the gun is about to go off. So Anissa starts running at her dad full speed like she's about to tackle him. And then he turns his head to look her way, and he's like, I told you. And before he can finish his sentence, she tackles him to the ground, and the gun goes off, and it's a big explosion. And that guy ends up dead, obviously. When she rolls off of him, she's like, Dad, I knew that he didn't know that those weapons were dangerous, and whoever sent him, they knew that he was expendable. He just didn't know it. And so he gives her a hug. And so we go back to the house, and Jefferson is rambling to Lynn about how Anissa just saved his life and how he shouldn't try to change her. And, she has good instincts already, and he doesn't want to do anything to mess that up. And he asks Lynn if she's waiting for Jennifer, and I believe she says no. And then he finally stops rambling. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, endorphins. And he looks at her, and he's like, you have sad eyes. What's going on? And she says, I went to talk to Gambi like you suggested. And it turns out that he knows more than we thought. Jefferson says, well, what did he tell you? And Lynn says, you just need to go talk to him. So then we get this scene of Lala. He's in the shower, and he says, I have so many questions. And he turns around, and LaWanda appears. He says, if I was dead, how did I die? How did I come back? And why am I here, basically? And LaWanda looks at him and says, everything's going to be okay. And obviously she's in the shower too, but she's not getting wet, which is weird. And then they start kissing weirdly. And then as soon as he gets into the kiss, LaWanda disappears, and he's left there, and he starts crying. The next to last scene is Jefferson going to Gambi's shop to talk to him because Lynn told him to. And when he comes in, Gambi is sitting there, and I think he's sipping on a drink. And he says, all these years I tried to protect you. And Jefferson's like, well, protect me from what? And he says, now the only way to protect you is to tell you the truth. Jefferson says, what are you talking about? And then Gambi says, my real name is Peter Esposito. 30 years ago, I came to Freeland as an agent for a government organization called the ASA. They were conducting an experiment in Freeland. They were giving the people a vaccine to make them docile and passive in a politically charged climate. Then he goes on to say that their vaccine inadvertently created metahumans, and his job was to catch them. But when he realized that the ASA's vaccine was killing children, he leaked the information to Jefferson's father. And his investigation into that vaccine got him killed. So then Jefferson asks him, "Did you turn me into Black Lightning?" And Gamby says, "No, but when I realized that you had powers, I knew that I couldn't let them get you." Gamby says, "I can't protect you anymore." He says, "Martin Proctor, who's the head of the ASA in this area, is looking for you. And if you go out in the suit or use your powers, he'll find you and he'll kill you. And if Vanessa uses her powers, then he'll, find her and kill her too." So then the last thing Gamby says is, "I'm sorry, Jefferson, but you have to stop being Black Lightning." And Jefferson's eyes flare up and he says, "Stay away from me and stay away from my family," and he leaves. The last scene of the episode is Anissa. She's in her room. She's going over some papers. Jennifer enters the room and Anissa says, "Whatever it is, I don't have time for it right now." Jennifer just stands there, and so Anissa looks at her and says, "Are you pregnant?" Jennifer says, "No, but something weird is going on." She hands the phone over to Anissa and Anissa says, "So you dropped your phone or you broke your phone?" Jennifer says, "No, look at the edges. I did this with my hands." And then Anissa shakes her head, realizing that her sister has powers too. I thought this was a really good episode. Finally, Gamby is out of the shadows and we know his, I don't want to say his intentions, but we know the backstory of where he came from, how he got there. And I wonder if he felt guilty because he had Jefferson's father killed, essentially, not, directly, but indirectly, him giving him that information got the man killed. And so he felt like he had to become a father figure to Jefferson and train him how to use his powers and help the community because his organization was tearing the community apart. We didn't even see Tobias in this episode. I guess we'll see him later. I feel like it's good. The storyline's getting better and better with each episode. If y'all have any comments, questions, or concerns, please leave them down below. I want to thank you guys as always for watching my videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.